Hello there, kids. This is Miss Kinnearman, and this is a take-home flipped lesson on prehistory. Some of this may be stuff that you already know, some of it will be new, but basically this is a presentation for you to do at home. It goes along with some of the stuff that will be in the textbook as homework, but it saves us some time in class to be able to do activities. So please just do your note piece with this, and if you could write answers to anything at the end, that would be really good for you and for me, so we can do our discussion in the morning. The entire program is on prehistory, and if you look at prehistory, what we talk about, if you just look at the picture, you can analyze that we're talking about prior knowledge by human beings and how they are going to interact with their environment. And really, it's before humans kept records. The records that they kept were minimal, and the languages that were used and the language that's available is minimal. So it's more a picture story, picture history. But you guys need to know some vocabulary for prehistory. So I'm going to put this down. You're going to see that you have this as one of your sets of information. If you can take down what you need to complete this, just put it on pause yourself and then come back to the program. I'm going to continue and try and fit this into the 15-minute limit. All right, so again, you can pause this. So if you look at history and you look at it's a record of past events, the whole idea of humanity being the human race, including all people, people who write history being the historians, and then again, culture being all of the people's attitudes, their values, their customs, and generally their way of life. So we're going to be looking at prehistory through those lenses, if you would. And really, everything you have to remember is that every culture is different. What some people think is appropriate clothing today are seen by people my age, 60, as being inappropriate. And these are all cultural pieces. They're all values that are transmitted through schooling, learning, in formal settings, informal settings, family, what you read, what you believe, and what you're trained and taught to think. Right, so just know that even though something may look odd to you, it fits with the people who believe that it's a part of their culture. So keep an open mind on that. If you look at the key vocabulary terms for anything, really the whole thing is cultural diffusion. When customs and ideas move from one culture to another, the whole idea is that they diffuse, they spread out. Now, they don't always stay the same. So, for example, if you look at the stuff on the right-hand side with the circles, those are Chinese phrases, or Japanese phrases. On the left-hand side are pictographs that are Chinese. And they will mean the same thing, but they're modified. So in Japan, you have this adaptation of culture, and it starts in the prehistory. It's things that come there and then are changed by the people that are living at those times. An example of cultural diffusion, again, is language, An example of cultural diffusion, sorry. Okay, an example of cultural diffusion and items that are culturally diffused are languages. So you'll find that Spanish is similar in Spain to Mexico, but maybe completely different when you start speaking Spanish with somebody who's on a Caribbean island. You'll have clothing similarities and differences based on, again, the religions will be similar and different, architecture and food. There's a reason that you understand me when I say to you that we're having something like Szechuan chicken, and if you have ever had it, you know you're having Chinese food. If I say to you you're having some sushi today, again, you're having something that's primarily a Japanese cuisine. And these things are diffused to the United States and become very familiar. That's cultural diffusion. It's also how cultures change, adapt, and modify. Okay, you may have things in culture, like I said before, that are different, that makes you kind of uncomfortable. It's not something you're very familiar with. The picture on the left is an example of what a dainty foot would like if you did foot binding, and I'll be showing you what that looks like, and the deformity that is required to fit a person who's female's foot into a shoe, and that's an adult foot. And then you have on the other side the Padang women of Thailand, whose dress required them to wear necks of brass, and so their nickname were the Giraffe Women of Thailand. These things look odd to us, but they're signs of beauty in somebody else's culture. I don't particularly like tattoos. Somebody else likes them. I don't particularly like something like gauges in your ears. Somebody else likes them. Again, but these are things that you adapt to and that are modified by culture. When you're looking at as being a historian, you have to make sure that you get to write the information. All right, you have to know the difference between primary sources and secondary sources, and you have to know the difference between good primary sources. Right, you want to get the things that are most accurate, and so you're going to look to see, do they have opinion? Are they one-sided? Are they biased? And these things are the skills that you need, just like you need to be able to bounce a basketball, dribble a soccer ball, toss a tennis ball, reach over the net and crush a volleyball. If you're an athlete, you need as a historian to have these skills of understanding and using research, primary sources being very important for that. Example of primary sources are things like interviews. You sit down, you have an interview with a baseball player. Okay, a diary for women has been historically their primary place to put all of their historical information. And you shouldn't discount a diary, even though it's written in the first person and it's full of opinion. It's also full of fact of what's going on in the day. And it's one of the places that women were allowed to maintain history for themselves. So history for men tended to be out in newspapers, in letters, in books, and for women it tended to be in personal diaries and in conversations and oral history transmitted over a quilt, or a quilt itself becomes history. So you have to look for these primary sources. Secondary sources are things that have secondhand information. And again, they're third party, he said, she said kinds of things. And this happens a great deal out in the land of history, where people say things, think it's firsthand. You need to check your sources, make sure that it's not an article written by a historian about a topic, but that it's the person involved in the historical event. Right? You want to look at that, and then know that that person will have bias as well. Right? Examples of things that are secondary sources that are not really good are things like gossip. You have reporters would have their own viewpoint. You can go out now today and listen to Fox on one end of the spectrum and Al Jazeera on the other side of the spectrum. It's up to you what you listen to and what news you have. But again, your secondary sources are secondhand information, and they're usually third party, third hand. Okay, people that are out there studying, the first people that are going to dig stuff and find stuff are going to be your archaeologists. This is an example of a Clovis point. It's one of the Stone Age points. It's made out of obsidian, I believe. And the whole idea is to look at these things and figure out what are artifacts and what are just plain old rocks. Okay, sometimes we take things, go to a dig site, and I'll pick something. I've picked things up when I've gone to a dig site, and I think it's nothing. And it turns out that it was a stone is round in that area because it's used to grind. Who knew? I just don't grind up my wheat with stones. So you have to know that this is a skill, all right, and that you're trained to be an archaeologist. A lot of these things that we take for granted. Pottery is an example of an artifact. You put these plates together. You can go to a garbage dump today and you can put an archaeological dig together on Goshen. If you just went to the Altari landfill and you dug it up, it's there for years and years and years. And so you take people's stuff and you can figure out what has this community been like from the layers that are there as a part of the landfill. And then you look at the various designs and things that are a part of the art form as well. In order to find the time of these things, I think you might remember this is radiocarbon dating. What you're looking for is you're going to find the carbon content in this. You're going to use the kind of science that allows you to age the artifact. They can't do it in exact. They're now doing it with all sorts of other technological tools since the age of the computers. But the original form of dating was radiocarbon dating. And again, they would try to find out the carbon life. If you're an anthropologist, what you want to do is you want to understand the behavior of people. You want to know what are people like, right? You study what they throw out to find out what the people are like, all right? And you want to really understand them. You might go to grave sites. You might go to, like we said, digs. You might unearth ancient housing and try to figure out what was the bedding like. Anybody that's ever seen scenes from Pompeii and how fast everybody was killed and the whole scene is there, all right? There are parts of it that you can analyze because of the fact that it was covered with ash. What do we need to know? We need to know that these guys use calendars. They need to measure time. They measure time differently in BCE and CE. That's how we do it. It used to be BC and AD. Please get it. It's before the Common Era and after the Common Era. All right, Common Era. So your school calendar is going to start on September 6th or so, 2013 CE. That's what the time period is that we're in. Okay, if you take this down in your notes, put it on pause. Again, this is what those two sets of acronyms stand for. Okay, the Stone Age. It's not the Flintstones. Do you know how the Stone Age got its name? Put this on pause, think about it, answer a couple of names, figure it out. It's pretty logical, right? But put your answers in your notes. Okay, the Stone Age got its name because these are the weapons and tools that were made. All right, and one of the major things is a form of volcanic glass. So obsidian is the thing. If you can find that, and it starts out, it can be chipped, it can be molded. It's easy to make into a very sharp point. Okay, a couple other things that happened during this time period. You have the invention of fire. All right, in your again on your notes, please put down how does fire help humans. Answer that question. All right, and we'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow. When you go back to the Stone Age, a lot of what we can tell, besides from what the anthropologists find, but the archaeologists are looking in caves, and the anthropologists are looking at what's on the cave. And they're taking these paintings, and it's a story of life. It's a story of the life of people that are out trying to survive. And so you have to look at what they think is important. And all of this reflects what they have as an important time base. This is kind of a review. If you're thinking back to 6th grade, you might have had some of this stuff early, or maybe you've had it in some of your other classes. And again, the first humans were nomads. All right, remember that? Do you remember what a nomad was? Okay, another term that we use in the Regents curriculum is hunter-gatherers. All right, they were hunters and they were gatherers. They gathered things. They might gather clams if they lived by the seashore. They developed tools to open those clams. They might gather mussels if they lived by creeks or rivers, and they developed tools to help get those things out of their shells. We're talking about people that were hunters with stone tools, and they hunted they had to live in small groups, okay, because you can't survive in a large group of nomads. The new time period and survival and the change is going to be, it's a real turning point in history. It's called the Neolithic Revolution. Now, not all revolutions are violent. As you can see here, it creates an age ending in Paleo is the Old Stone Age, and Neolithic Stone Age. Right? It's when humans first learned to make settlements because they stopped hunting and gathering as much. They invented tools that allow them to grow their own food, and they developed the skills to domesticate or harness animals and make animals respond to humans. Okay, humans learned to use the seeds from wild plants to grow their first crops. It's not a real good science, but it worked enough that they could build settlements and they could start to become civilized. The Bronze Age later on is 3500 to 1500, and you've got stone tools that broke easily being replaced by the metal of bronze. It's a mixture of copper and tin. I think you've seen it. It's usually that great big statue that's green. It looks green and gross, right? And that's the bronze piece. In the Bronze Age, this is when humans learned to make sleds that could carry things, and then they can use the animals, and they learn to make canoes. A lot of times they're dug out right from a tree, and they carry the things over water. So now it's that you have a form of transportation, and you're getting to a place where you can go from place to place because you have a food supply, you know how to get back, etc. You're going to need to keep that in mind. All right, that's the end of this visual piece that you can do your notes with. There'll be a recall quiz tomorrow, so you got to be able to answer the 17 questions that follow. All right, and you may answer them in writing and attach them to this note packet for tomorrow. And the only answers to the ones you think you can't remember or recall. So again, if you think that you get all this, then you don't have 17 questions to do, but there's probably some in here that you'll have an opinion about or that you'll have some information on. All right, so review the next couple of slides, and you'll see that those are a part of this packet. Okay, don't forget, you're going to have to pause for those quiz questions because they're just listed real quick.